Hey everyone, this is Ben back with you in the Midwestern Model Shop. So we're continuing on episode 3 of the Duchess of Kingston. In today's episode, I'm going to go ahead and apply the first layer of planking. I know for your average viewer, this is probably going to be a boring video. I do a lot of talking, a ton of talking. So just be aware. But all that's relevant to try to explain the finer details of applying your first layer of planking and how that carries over into the second more important layer of planking that we're going to do down the road. So lots of talking in this video. I think all the information is good, and I hope that it helps you if you're doing this, because the reality is when you're planking a wooden ship, you almost need a set of instructions for every single plank, which can be a lot. I make a couple of mistakes in this one. I share and show all of that so you can see what didn't go right. I kind of don't follow all my own rules because I got a little lazy, but that's okay. We could do that in this episode. It doesn't hurt anything. And yeah, that's it. I'm not feeling very well, but I've got medicines. I should be better soon. But anyway, yeah, I hope this all helps. Let's go ahead and get into it. We are back in action, folks, and I'm super excited about this next step because we're going to begin the planking. So, first of all, I have my beverage of choice, my official Vanguard Models Duchess of Kingston coaster provided by an avid supporter, which I do really appreciate. You can get these, I believe, from Vanguard Models. So we're going to begin our second planking. Oh, no, I'm sorry, our first planking today. And I know I talk a lot, but there's a couple of things that we have to discuss. First of all, this is going to be super easy to do because we put these filler blocks in, and that's great. Second of all, there's like 3 philosophies maybe, I don't know, about how to put on the first layer of planking. The assumption is that you did not put these filler blocks in, that all you have at this point on your build are each one of these frames. And so what you're doing with the first layer of planking, is you're basically creating this positive glue surface that we already have. Now you could say, well, Ben, why don't you just skip and go straight to the finish layer? Because the entire kit is designed to have this first layer of planking on, and then you apply the second layer, finish layer of planking, and that you need the thickness. So this just makes everything easy right away. So one of the ideas is you just need to get your planks on the ship however the heck you want. Just get them on there. That's all that matters. Just put them on and you're done. Another philosophy is put them on the ship and then do just kind of an okay job at it and fill everything in with wood putty filler and sand it down again to get yourself a nice smooth surface, and then you'll be fine to go. The third philosophy is plank up this layer as if it was your final layer, meaning practice putting it on so that when you come around to the front and you have to shrink the size of each plank so that they merge together correctly and fit up here nicely, that it works. Because you will have to do that on your second layer of planking for accuracy's sake. So I like to do kind of a combination of that and just getting it on. So the first thing I want to do is determine how many boards or planks will it take per side. And so what you do to figure that out is you take a piece of tape and you tape it from the very top edge of where you're going to be planking to all the way down to where it terminates at the widest point. Now, some of the clever folks on here will say, well, Ben, the widest point's in the back all the way down in here. This is the greatest distance you have to cover. That is true, but what I'm interested in is the widest point where I don't have to change the size of the planks that I have. I'm just going to simply butt them all up to each other and they're all going to fit, or mostly all fit in a row. And that's usually midship right here. So if you lay a piece of tape on here all the way down and you peel it off, and then cut it so it's exact length, and then you peel it off carefully, you now have the total length of this curved shape. And you can go ahead and lay down on the mat like I have, and then you can go ahead and you can put, hopefully you can see that, little dashed marks on here indicating the width of each board, which works out to 5 millimeters in my case, each of the planks. And then if I count all of these, I'll discover that I need 17 planks to fill in the middle of the ship. Well, that's really convenient because you're only provided 34 planks from Vanguard of, I think this is beach. And so I have 17 and 17. They give you the exact number that you need. And while that might be slightly concerning, the thing to note is they're long. You're going to have excess hanging off the end here, so we'll be plenty of little spares to fill in little things that we need as we go. Now, one other comment, well, couple other comments, all of which are important. By filling in the blocks down here, we've negated several problems, potential problems. One, it's going to be easy to glue the boards on. Two, there's no worrying about this thing going out of square and wiggling on us anymore. If you do not do this, there is an argument that says if you only plank up one side, you could pull or push the keel out of square. Some people say that's not true, it won't happen, it'll be fine. I don't totally believe that. I believe that you can place the planking on here and keep this keel straight, but I think the reason that rumor goes around is because someone has done that before. Someone has planked up this whole side and did it in such a way where it did shove the whole thing out of square. So the solution then is to do one plank at a time on both sides and keep them uniform. There's an argument for that being a waste of time because there's no way that you fared both sides exact. I would argue that it's really, really close though, and that I've gone out of my way to really, really get both sides fared as even as possible, and it should be really close to being uniform. So for me, just for practice sake and to do it kind of the right way, I will plank both sides because it's just the OCD in me. I want everything to match up at the bow here and terminate. I want the same curve, and I want everything to run together and meet at the same point here. So that's what we're going to do. All right, so with that being said, all of the brass pins that were in the side of the ship here earlier, I pulled them all out. I grabbed my little cutters and I went underneath the head and they popped right out. The first thing I'm going to do to prep though is I want a clean butt joint right in here where our plank is going to meet this piece, and so any glue that is kind of pushed out of here, I'm going to clean that up. So I'll go ahead and do that, and then we're going to come in and talk about our first plank because there's something going on up here at the bow right away that we have to talk about. Okay, we're ready to go, and I'm going to start out over on the starboard side in case I screw something up here. So I've got our first plank, and what I want to do is just, glue it on. Right now the curve's not so bad. I'll bend this with the plank bender. There is enough surface to glue to though that I could just glue it, work my way around, and it'll hold, just fine. But there's a lot of springiness here, so I will bend this with my plank bender to get, the shape kind of how we want. So the first thing I want to talk about is it should terminate up here in the bow, obviously, and meet kind of flush. Let's see if I can zoom in here. We're going to cut the end here to fit the shape of where it meets the rabbit, and I'm going to have it bump nicely into that edge like this. It's going to fit nice and smooth. The problem is, as this lays around and it terminates back here, see how I've got it following and we're going to curve up nice and smooth? I have this gap. See this funny looking gap? It starts here and curves up, I'm exaggerating, and then curves back down. If I follow that, my board will do that, and the next board will be all messed up too. I don't want that. I want it to start here in the bow, naturally come around the curve, and tie in to the back, because then you end up with this nice smooth line. So we are going to do that. I'm going to leave this gap right there. I think you could probably get away with just leaving the gap for the rest of the build of the model and you wouldn't have any trouble. But what we'll do anyway is come back later and fill that gap in with some not CA glue, with wood filler. It's just a tiny little gap. The rest of these boards, as we move on down, will bump up nicely against this, and they'll fit together and look really nice. So, get my stuff back together here. The front of this board's a little messed up, but I'm going to take my cutter here, cut a little bit of an angle, and that's pretty good. The details are important, so you do want this to terminate nicely and fit nicely right here like this. And in fact, I'm going to sand a little bit of a curve, and I'm going to flush up the board a little bit. I'm going to put a little bit of a bevel so that it sits just like so. And that's how we're going to terminate it, nice and flush. And I'm going to go ahead and get this in some water and get my plank bender out and bend it around, and then run it off the back of the ship so that we're in position. And once I'm happy with that, I'll duplicate it on the other side, and we'll press on from there with our plank bending. Let me get back to you. Okay, while my planks are soaking and my plank bender's heating up, I want to quickly discuss how we shape the planks in the bow section here so that they all fit and look nice. Again, first layer planking, we don't really care. The first rule is the first couple of planks usually are nearly full, but then they very quickly have to start being tapered to fit in the shape that you have right here. So what we had done earlier is I said, let's put a piece of tape back here and figure out, how wide these all need to be. Well, what you do up in the front, so then you have 17 boards in this case. You can go to like this fairing, usually right up in here is about the point, because not all the bottom ones are going to merge together up here. They're going to kind of run into right about here and end. But this is the last point where you're probably going to have all 17 boards crossing. So you put a piece of tape from here to here, cut it exact and take it off. Then you can set it down next to your old one if you want, and I've done that here. And so this is the width further back with the full length boards, and then this is the exact height at that bulkhead that we crossed. And what you do at this point is you take and measure from this end to this end and divide it by 17, because we have 17 boards. And you divide this distance by 17 and you'll get a new spacing. And that width at each of, that goes on here divided by 17 is how wide each of the boards need to be at that bulkhead. So you could actually do that for every single one of these and figure out the width, and that way you'll get the exact taper. But I found that usually, for scale's sake, by the time you're here, whatever that width is, you're only going to take just a little bit more off as you come around this corner right here. But that is how you determine how much wood needs to be removed to make everything fit together here tightly in the bow. All right, pressing on. Okay, we're back. First board plank is installed on both sides and turned out, just fine, no big deal, really easy to glue on. I used just the regular Titebond original, put it on there. I used the plank bender to apply a little heat. Sorry, the cord's a little short there. You apply a heat for a few minutes or, 30 seconds, and it sets up pretty fast. So as you can see here on both sides, we have this gap that I was talking about, fairly uniform. And most importantly for me, because I'm OCD, is these from the bow here, you can see that both of these have basically the same shape, curve, and meet, most importantly, at the exact same point on the stem here. That's really, really important. I was slightly disappointed about, so eyeball down this line. I'm going to try and show you here. starting right about here to there, it gets flat. This is actually a defect in the board. Then it's flat here to here also. Then there's this nice curve, and it goes on up and back. Same thing happened on this side. We're starting about here to about here. Actually, it raised up a little bit. And then starting here, it curves on up back. I'm going to try on my next board. You just want them to lay naturally. It ends up being, for this layer, it doesn't matter at all. But for the next layer, it's super important to try to get those to lay naturally and have a really nice gradual curve. You'll just, the hull lines will look better. It's not super noticeable, like from the side here, you can't really see it, right? But if you do get it off, people will notice that, hey, it curves down, then it whoop, goes like this and straight, and that's not what you want. So I'm trying to practice that now before I get to the second layer of planking where it matters. And also now, it's easier to do this instead of pushing the boards around trying to get a flush fit. They don't have to fit flush because we could just sand this down when we're done and put some wood filler in there. So let me get a couple more boards on here, and then yeah, I'll get back to you with some updates. Pressing on. Hey-oh, we're back in action. Sorry, bumping the camera. Okay, so I have now 3 pieces along the bow, and I've actually, we're up on the top here, I've actually started tapering with the 3rd piece down from here to about there. I just kind of eyeballed it, and it's just going to help fit. And I've got some gaps here because I'm trying to get these boards, these planks, to come down and produce a very smooth, natural line. So it's especially bad over here on the starboard side. We've got a little gap, but this underside's transitioning very well. So while that's getting going here, I thought, well, we ought to head on down to the keel area, because one of the things they suggest you do, and I find that it works well too, is start from the bottom and work up a little bit, and the top and work down, and your final piece should lay in the middle. And that means you'll be able to custom fit your final piece. You'll be spending a bunch of time on it to get it fit right here. So we have this piece installed over here, and I want to talk about it. So I've got my clamp going while we're drying. In the back, it's a full piece. I've glued it. You know, we're twisting from vertical to almost laying down horizontal over here. So it's been soaked in some water and then heated and everything and twisted. Most of this is eventually going to be sanded away. And the reason I say that is the keel that sits on this false keel, the final planking, the second layer planking, should butt into it flush in real life. If we want to be historic, we're going to try and do that. So this is just in here and is going to get sanded away. I've got a big gap right here in my little block of wood. So this first layer of planking is really providing the structure right there, and it's just going to be the case. As you can see, I've got a little arrow right here and another arrow right here pointing back. And it has a lot to do with getting this board to lay perfectly flush up against this center piece. And so what I've done, here's the other side. I made a couple of reference marks. Let me just talk about it. So in the back here, and I realized that my clamps are in the way, there's a gap. There's like this factory gap. And what I did was draw a line right here to line up with this back gap. So while I'm monkeying with this, I'm always putting the plank back in the same location. The next issue is, if we look real close right here, you can see there's a lip. And so this plank is going to bump up against it flush like so. But I want it to be flush, and it's at an angle. So the reason for my mark here all the way to here is that it gave me a spot where I could put a bevel on the board. I'm going to see if I can show you this. Maybe I hope you can see that right there. That this is no longer flat. It's on an angle, okay? And the way that I accomplished that was I have a little hand plane that I'm using. You don't need to do this. You could use an X-Acto knife. You can use sandpaper. This is all brass Lee-Nielsen, made in America. Extraordinarily expensive tool that you do not need unless you like tools, and then you need it. You do need this. But it works very well. And so I used it to quickly plane that little bevel. And what that allows me to do is this piece now lays down here naturally, right? And butts up perfectly flush with that little bevel against my edge right here, because I've taken off the inside edge that would poke it out. It's a little thing, but again, it makes a big difference. Now up at the bow here, we have to work on, I've left some room here. This is going to twist down and go like this. And I have to work on shaping it to fit this profile right here. Let me show you what I mean. Here we've already accomplished it on the port side, and you'll be able to come back with a little X-Acto blade if you need to, and you could trim this a little bit to help your edge right here. But that's the idea. And then the next piece is going to come along. It'll be longer. It'll extend up into here and terminate. And then we'll do a couple more. We'll have to start thinning them, putting a bevel on them like we did right here, so they all fit together, and they'll just stack in to place. But anyway, I wanted to talk about that keel piece right here. I'm going to go ahead and get the other one installed on the starboard side, and then I will begin bringing some planks up this way as I come down. And this allows you to double your efforts, because if you do 2 at a time, right, and you start fitting them in place, you really got to let the glue dry before you can start monkeying them with the next one down. And it's like, well, what do I do? I'm waiting now, and this isn't done. I've got little pins holding stuff in, and I'm not done. Well, or I'm done until this dries. What do? You start coming this way. So once this one's installed and glued and it's drying, I will begin working on the next 2. And when they're installed, I'll come back up and I'll move this way. And so we'll progress along like that. All right, pressing on. All right, so we've made some more progress. I've got, looks like 5 boards up and installed on the top, and I have 3 per side down here on the bottom, and we're just working our way together. And things are looking nice up here on the bow. I think that's we'll sand it and do a little filling, but this is working out really well. And then if you look at it from the front, everything's kind of coming together the way we want, and it's all matching up, which is really important. But what I wanted to bring up was this piece down here on the bottom. So this third piece, it's been trimmed a little bit here in the front so that it's a little bit narrower, right? And it goes back, I think right around here it becomes full. And then as you go back, starting right here, this is the way the board naturally wants to lay. And it comes up. So and we're going to do this, we're leaving it on purpose. We're going to install our first steelers. I believe that's the phrase. They're just going to stick right in here. We'll take, a couple of boards, and I'll shape them to a point so that they fill in here and aren't a problem and fill this little gap. Now, when we get to our final layer of planking, this will also happen, but we won't allow for a point. There's a scarf joint that's cut, a very specific shape that's used to allow you to add extra boards back here, extra planks, and not have that useless point. What is also important to note here, let me zoom out as best I can, we're getting pretty close to a uniform distance here, and then we're narrowing, and then we're narrowing back here, which is really nice. I went back to our midpoint, I threw a piece of tape on here between. I'm like, okay, well, that's our width, whatever that measures out to be. And because we allowed this board to follow its natural path, it starts to get thinner back here. But right here, we're pretty close to the same. You go up to the bow, it's almost exactly the same width. And then we start to get narrow again. So that means the remaining boards now that we lay in here are going to fill the entirety of this space, all because we allowed this board to lay naturally the way it was supposed to. So tapering, allowing it to lay naturally, this is how your spacing is going to work out. It's going to be real nice. So that's it for right now. I'm going to come back to you with this thing filled in and with some final thoughts. And then in the back here too, I want to point out, I didn't with this board, but with that one I cut it off. This one's cut off, that one's cut off. They're flush, following around this transom edge right here, because as I mentioned like 16 times already, we're just gonna put a filler block in here and sand it to be the correct shape to go from that edge down to this edge right here. Okay, so I hope that makes sense and you understand why we're doing what we're doing. But it's coming along real nice, looking like a ship. All right, we'll be back.
Okay, folks, I know I said I'd get back to you with the with the whole thing planked up, but well, first of all, I got my little Steelers in the back here, and they went just fine. And then I kind of didn't get away with something I was trying to do earlier. As you notice, we've gotten the same width basically right in here, and then it got wider. I ran into trouble right here. Whoop, I'll zoom in here. Basically what happened is, instead of calculating the width that all of these needed to be up towards the bow, I just kind of started guessing. And I ended up on this one removing from the top and the bottom to narrow the board, the plank, and I shouldn't have done that. It worked out in the back of the ship, but not up front. And I tried repeating it again, and I ended up with this big gap because I needed to get this distance right. So I'm sharing this because down here this all is working out, where you see we're getting to a real kind of small point up here with about 4 planks left to go. What I should have done, and I will do for the first layer of planking, which is why I'm showing you this, is I should have calculated the width of each plank right here and again right in here and narrowed them appropriately, because I was guessing where back here I needed to start tapering the planks, and I kind of got away with it up here, but ultimately I ended up being wrong. So that's the lesson learned, which is why I want to show you this now. The other thing is, so coming from the bottom up, it's important that you do that, because as you can see, if I do this, and I put one more in here, we're left with a 4th plank, and that 4th plank is not the full width, and that is on purpose. That is the idea, that you will end up custom fitting your last plank. So, and you know, I could wait and just come all the way down now, but I wanted you all to see that that is what will happen. So, all right, let me see if I can't finish this up for real now. Thanks. Okay, here we are. I'm all finished up with my first layer planking. I left all my big mistakes on here so that you guys could see. There's nothing sanded or cleaned up. I mean, it's trimmed back up here at the transom, but that's it. Whoops, I keep knocking this little piece of wood off here that's a little fragile. So I left this gap here. You can see how things didn't go right with my spacing. I should have started, well, I did. I went, looks like 2 full planks, and then I started here. I should have started calculating somewhere in here and in here the thicknesses. I like how we started ramping up right in here. That's real nice. But these should have trended up as well. I think I should have been a lot narrower towards the top. So when we get to our final layer of planking, we'll address that. Now, obviously, it's like, what are you doing in here at this mess? You could fill that with wood, but it's just faster to get wood filler. Just slop it in here, let it dry, and set up. Things worked really well for me in the back of the ship. We got a little tight in here. This wouldn't be right. Normally, you would be probably a little bit more full planks along the top here, and you'd be merging everything together. We'll sort that out in the back as well. With our final layer of planking, the second layer. Same thing on the other side. We've got this big gap here. Trying to remain consistent is the big thing. And I think you can see there the planking lined up basically how we want it. So that's it. I know I did a lot of talking in this video. I apologize if, well, actually I'm not sorry, because this is all relevant information. So yeah, you can skip to the end and see here, but we'll fill in along the top here with basically what I'm going to do next time is when I come back, I will fill all this in with wood putty, just slather it on, fill in your gaps, and sand the whole thing down, get it nice and smooth again like we had before. And you were check, use your wood putty to check and see, like, if you've got any divots, use that wood putty to fill it in, get it all nice and smooth and flat. All right, and then we'll come back and press on from there. All right, hope everyone's doing well. We'll see you next time.